And here we are again. Thanks for joining us this Sunday for the real story behind the week's big stories. We're here every Sunday at 9 a.m. and 10:35 p.m. to give you the inside scoop on the Mid-South's biggest news stories. And here's what we're digging into this week. First up, the Memphis crime fight. A Collierville state senator now making it his mission to tackle it head on, and the Memphis mayor gets more proof the revolving door at 201 Poplar is a real problem. Power play. MLGW gets the rate hike it was seeking, but appears to throw in the towel about moving its headquarters to Cordova for the time being. And in the stadium saga, are they just pouting, or do some on Memphis City Council have a legitimate reason for stalling a $220 million renovation of Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium? We'll get to all of that in a moment, but first let me introduce my distinguished panel, starting with ABC24 political analyst Otis Sanford. Mark Billingsley is a former chairman of the Shelby County Commission, and Susan Adler-Thorpe is a political consultant with Thorpe Communications. Otis, I want to start with an editorial that you had this week in the Daily Memphian that I thought was very poignant and just raised an interesting question. Again, we're never going to solve the crime problem on this show. We're going to give people something to think about, though, I hope. And the line that stuck out to me, you just basically said, look, you're not making excuses at all for what's happening, especially with the surge in juvenile crime, but maybe we should look at ourselves. You said, allow me to offer something else that is not an excuse, just a reason. Our society, particularly our political system, has noticeably degenerated to the point where lying, cheating, and exploiting others are often excused, if not overlooked or rewarded. I truly believe many of these miscreants are not oblivious to what else is going on in our nation. They see those at the top getting away with their own version of smash and grab. And you go on to enumerate how even when you look at the salaries of the average CEO in this country, back in the 1980s, it was maybe 18 to 20 times of the average worker who worked for them. Now it's gone up to 40, 45 times. The numbers aren't exact, but it's increased substantially. We look at all the politicians that seem to be getting away with an awful lot right now, Republican and Democrat. You were very bipartisan in your approach there, but I think you raised an interesting point. I'll let you just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not making any excuses for our rising crime. I mean, it is atrocious, breaking the record again for homicides, the smash and grab robberies that are going on all the time, carjackings and car thefts. I'm not making any excuses for that. But we got to look at this as in a bigger way by looking at where are we in our society. And I contend, and I tried to make that point, that our society has gotten to the point where we excuse too much, especially from our business leaders and especially our politicians, to the point where these criminals, they may not know who Bob Menendez is, or they might not even know who George Santos is, but they do know that society is going in the wrong direction, and they're saying, I want mine too. Now, that's a crazy idea, but that's what they think. And we need to consider that when we try to deal with all the issues around crime, but also let's look at political corruption, business executives taking advantage of people. We have to look at it all.
And honor and class are two words that seem to have fallen off our dictionaries as well, because both of those congressmen you mentioned and Senator Menendez, there was a time when they would have resigned, faced with the indictments they were facing. But that's not the case anymore. They fight. So, all right. State Senator Brent Taylor of Collierville, I want to talk about him now because he's taking action that I think we all have to agree, whether we agree with everything he's done. Even though he lives in Collierville, he's fed up with the Memphis crime problem, and he's done several things to try and bring attention to it. He said that the city is under siege, and he asked in a letter to Governor Lee for state troopers to get involved, and he got some response to that fairly quickly. More than a dozen state troopers sent to help patrol our highways. He criticized a judge for letting murder defendant out without bail, Judge Anderson, and that also brought some response, but exposed issues with the bond system here, bail bond system here in Memphis and Shelby County. And he asked for investigations most recently by a Board of Judicial Conduct and Board of Professional Responsibility to look into not only Judge Paula Skane, but also DA Steve Mulroy in some of what their decisions have been regarding enforcement of crime. And, you know, I just think it was interesting, the responses that came from those decisions by him and those actions that he's taken. We'll start with Steve Mulroy. He said, I consider Brent Taylor a friend, but he's not a lawyer. Neither has he been a prosecutor. If the prosecutor has significant doubts about the guilt of somebody or whether they're eligible for a particular sentence, then it's their job to make it right. And he says that's all that prosecutors and people like himself have been doing. And in response, Brent Taylor said, I just don't think it's political because the community is suffering. This community is terrorized by people that are committing crimes with impunity, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. All I'm trying to do is raise awareness. As the Republican here at the table, Mark Billingsley, what are your thoughts about him getting involved so much as he is in trying to do something about the crime problem here?
Well, quite frankly, Richard, I texted Senator Brent Taylor, I think just last night, to thank him for his advocacy on behalf of public safety. We're not seeing a whole lot of elected officials, people in great leadership standing up and saying, let's look at the cause, let's look at the crime. He recently, as you alluded to, Mayor Jim Strickland asked Judge Bobby Carter, former judge, to investigate how long cases are taken. We've got some people who have been waiting for trial for 800 days.
Let's. We have a graphic made to call attention to exactly what you're saying. This is the report by a former criminal court judge, Bobby Anderson, as you're talking about here, Carter, I should say. He says that pre-pandemic, there were about 200 trials every year. Post-pandemic, even though we're pretty much out of it, the number of cases being heard has not really increased at all, and it was fewer than 40 in just the past year. He said murder cases are now pending in Shelby County, 300 that have to go through the court system. That speaks to your delay there. And then another city with another study, I should say, with Just City, talked about how many cases and charges are dismissed right now in Shelby County, and it ranges, depending on what the qualifications are, between 55 and 68%. Some good points there.
Well, we need more Brent Taylors, quite frankly, on the Democratic side and Republican side to be voicing their concerns, and he's asking for action. Quite frankly, I celebrated it when he wrote the letter to the governor asking for state troopers to come into Memphis and get on the expressways and start enforcing our driving crimes. So again, I applaud Senator Brent Taylor, and I wish we could see more elected officials do the same.
And Susan is exposing, I think, a growing rift that we're seeing between the DA's office, between police departments, the sheriff's office, the politicians who are trying to run the city in both the county level and the city level. There's a lot of disagreement among the people we're relying on to try and make some headway in this crime problem that's not being addressed. I was telling you guys before we started the show here, I was at the Season of Remembrance that the DA's office has every year, has had for 13 years now, where the families of murder victims can come to the facility there at the University of Memphis campus, the Mike Rose Theater, and they present an ornament to put on the tree representing their loved one who died in the previous year. Any family member can come. And the tree was full. The tree was full. But what was not full was the audience. In fact, that Chief Davis did not show up. Mayor Strickland was not there. Mayor Harris was not there. The sheriff was not there. And we know that there's problems there, and it seems to me they got to work this out.
Well, there are problems between those facets of government, and it shouldn't be. They should all be getting along.
They were all invited, by the way, to that ceremony.
But, you know, I think we ought to go back and take another look at the courts, too. I mean, it's Brent Taylor can call for investigation by the Board of Professional Responsibility. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But there's something broken in our courts, that if fewer than 40 cases a year are completed, when we have, 10 divisions of criminal court? I mean, 4 cases for each one on average? Come on. What are these guys doing? And I'm going to tell you, the problem I see, too, is there's no oversight of our judges.
Right.
There is no senior judge anymore who could call a judge in and say, where have you been in the last 6 weeks? There's no one to, actually, it's parts, I'll say the media is partially to blame. When I was a reporter and Otis was a reporter, we always had reporters covering the courts.
Right.
Now there's no one covering the courts. So a judge can get to the office at 11, look over his docket, go have lunch at 12, come back at 1:30, and at 3:30 send everybody home. And nobody's going to know. Something's going on when you only have less than 40 cases a year that are resolved. And it's, I don't know what the answer is, but I would encourage our colleagues in the media to once in a while walk into a courtroom and see what's happening.
Well, I have been told, as you mentioned this, that from lawyers that say you would be surprised if you just parked a camera in the parking garage where the judges are supposed to park them. They're empty most of the time. And, they're making six-figure salaries that we're paying for.
There's no oversight, and the only oversight is 8 years later you can vote. And who really,
On a ballot with 100 names, you don't know who they are.
And when people vote for judge, they don't really know who they're voting for. So that's how, in all due respect to Judge Anderson, at that time, in that race, he won. He was first on the list of a whole bunch of candidates. When you're at the top of the list on the ballot, you have and Billingsley will tell you, you have a distinct advantage. I mean, I guess if you want to be a judge. I like being a bee.
What about Paul Young?
Well, right, he won.
Well, with 7% of the vote. So if you want to be a judge in Shelby County, change your last name to Aardvark. Then you'll win.
I think Susie has hit on one of the major problems here, lack of oversight. I think former Judge Carter's report was very sobering. And it did sort of vindicate Jim Strickland's claim of a revolving door when you have that level of inactivity going on in our courts. It is up to the community to hold these judges accountable in any way that they can. Keep beating the drum on this, force them to come out and explain what they do and why they do it. You're right, 8 years between elections when nobody knows who these people are unless you are in the courtroom.
They say we can't talk publicly because they hide behind some kind of judicial ethics.
Absolutely.
Well, what did you see those figures on the screen that we showed, that graphic? 68% of cases and charges were dismissed.
Right.
I mean, how do you think that makes law enforcement feel? Yeah. When these officers go out and arrest these people, they risk their lives, and then they turn around and they're back on the streets.
Now, some of the explanation for that was, well, maybe sometimes you're overcharging people in some of those cases.
With the intent of bringing it down.
With the intent of bringing it down, and that might play into the numbers. But your overall point is absolutely right.
Mark, I'll let you have the final word on this before we move on.
Well, again, it starts with leadership at the top, and I think to everyone's point, you've got to hold elected folks accountable, and the more you can talk about it, as a county commissioner, I can tell you, when an audience showed up at the county commission, commissioners rethought their positions on different issues. So also, we've got to talk about at some point the lack of voter participation. We're going to talk at some point in the next couple of weeks about a referendum on with city council. But again, voter participation is extraordinarily poor.
So can we hire a chief judge? I mean, is that something that, how would that even happen?
They used to appoint a chief judge.
Yeah,
okay.
That's within the court itself.
That's itself.
I mean, we don't have any, the public doesn't have any say in that. That's a court function, and maybe with the administrative office in Nashville getting involved in that, but we can't get into that.
Maybe Senator Brent Taylor can send out a letter on that.
Well, I hope so. I applaud Brent Taylor as well. I agree.
I think he's onto something for sure.
Yeah.
And let's look, again, to your point from your editorial, look at the Supreme Court, what they're getting away with there.
That's right. I should have mentioned them.
The positions that you hold in respect and in honor, or we used to, now as high as the highest office in the branch in the land, people are getting away with
something
a lot of
has to be done
practices.
because what we've been doing isn't working.
Right.
Yeah.
So something new has to happen.
Right. All right, we're going to leave it there for now, but when we come back, we're going to talk about MLGW. They wanted to take 12% more from every utility bill to pay for electricity, and that is going to happen thanks to the City Council giving its thumbs up this week. We'll talk about that in a moment.